In a grand kingdom, surrounded by lush forests and vast fields, there stood a magnificent palace where King Paul and his daughter, Princess Grace, lived in splendor. The palace was filled with shining gold, sparkling chandelier, and the finest silks. But behind the luxury and riches, there is a young maid named Abby, who had never known such a life. Abby's world was one of hard work and quiet longing. Abby had worked in the palace since she was a little child. She was in charge of tending to Princess Grace, ensuring that the princess's every need was met. She brought her meals on time, helped her choose her clothes, brushed her long hair, and ensured her comfort from dawn until dusk. Abby's life was a quiet one, full of routine and dutiful service. But in the stillness of her small, worn-out room, Abby often found herself dreaming of wealth, of gowned gowns, of being a princess herself. Her life, though filled with the joy of serving someone she admired so much, was far from the opulence of the royal family. Abby lived in a small run-down hut on the outskirts of the kingdom, completely alone. She had no family, no friends, just the endless work of serving the princess, a job she took great pride in, but one that reminded her daily of her own humble background. Every day, she often found herself gazing out the palace windows, watching the royal family go on their grand adventures, wishing that just for one day, she could experience the life they led. One day of riches, of beauty, of freedom. She wondered if she would ever have the life she longed for, or if she was destined to live out her days in that little hut, just a maid in a vast and glittering world. But as the days go by, Abby's wishes began to fade. There is no way I can ever become a princess. I was born poor, and I may die poor, she muttered to herself one evening as she walked back home, as if trying to drag herself out of her fantasy world. One fateful morning, as the Grand Kingdom bustled with preparations for an upcoming royal feast, disaster struck. Princess Grace, who was known for her beauty and grace, had fallen gravely ill the day before the long-awaited journey. Her condition was serious, and despite the best efforts of the kingdom's finest herbalists, the princess could not move a single limb without feeling a sharp, debilitating pain. The royal palace was thrown into chaos. King Paul, the ruler of the kingdom, paced restlessly through the halls, his face filled with worry. The feast was an important tradition, a celebration that could not go on without the princess's presence. As the hours ticked by and no remedy seemed to help, King Paul grew frantic. His kingdom's reputation depended on Princess Grace's attendance. "Somebody help me!" King Paul screamed in desperation. Abby, who had been standing near the window, watching the flurry of activity below, turned at the sound of the king's voice. Her heart sank as she saw the worry in his eyes. And then, without warning, the king turned and pointed at her. "Abby," King Paul said with a firm voice, "you are to dress as my daughter and accompany me to the feast." The room fell silent. Every servant in the room gasped in shock. The king had never spoken to Abby in such a way before. She, a simple maid, was to take the princess's place? The king continued, "You know the princess better than anyone. You have attended to her every need for years. You understand the way she moves, the way she speaks, the way she carries herself. You are the only one who can do this for the kingdom." Abby felt a wave of shock wash over her. She was stunned, unable to fully comprehend what was happening. This was the opportunity she had always wished for, though never in her wildest dreams had she imagined it would come this way. To be a princess, even for a day, it seemed impossible. Yet, she was here, being asked to step into Princess Grace's shoes, to become a princess for a royal feast. King Paul did not give her time to refuse. He immediately summoned the palace seamstress, who rushed forward with fabrics, needles, and scissors. In a flurry of movement, they worked to transform Abby into a vision of royalty. Her simple maid's dress was replaced with a beautiful gown made of silk and jewels, shimmering in the light. The seamstress styled her hair into an elegant updo, crowned with a delicate tiara. When Abby looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back at her. She was no longer a maid. She was a princess. "I look," Abby stammered, overwhelmed by the transformation. "You look perfect," King Paul said with a proud smile. "Now, we must leave. The kingdom is waiting." Abby's heart raced as she followed the king out of the palace and onto the royal carriage. As they journeyed towards the neighboring kingdom, Abby took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. For the first time in her life, she was experiencing the world of royalty, of wealth and privilege. And though she had always dreamt of such life, she was determined not to let her nerves show. Throughout the journey, she carried herself with the poise and grace she had seen Princess Grace exhibit countless times. She curtsied, smiled, and spoke with the elegance of a true princess. The king, who had been uncertain at first, soon grew impressed by how effortlessly Abby stepped into the role. When they arrived at the feast, no one noticed that it was not the real Princess Grace standing beside King Paul. Abby had learned over the years how to imitate Grace's mannerisms so well that even the most trained eyes could not tell the difference. She fit in perfectly, gliding through the evening with the elegance of someone born into royalty. The nobles and dignitaries were none the wiser. They marveled at her beauty, her grace, and her charm. The feast was grand, with tables overflowing with food, music, and laughter. Abby enjoyed every moment, feeling like a princess for the first time in her life. She ate with finesse, held her head high, and never faltered in her duties. She couldn't believe how happy she was, how free she felt. The life she had always longed for, even for a day, was hers. When the feast came to an end and they returned to the kingdom, King Paul called Abby into the palace's living room. There, he told her what he had been thinking all night. "Abby," the king said, his voice filled with respect, "you have proven that you are more than just a maid. You have the heart and grace of a noble woman. I would like to offer you a new position in my court. You will become the secretary of the kingdom. You will oversee all the kingdom's affairs, from the smallest to the grandest. You will be the princess's royal advisor." Abby stood there, stunned. She had never imagined that this simple act of stepping into the princess's role would change her life so completely. Not only had she experienced the life of royalty, but now she was being given a position of immense power and respect. With her promotion came a generous increase in her wages and a new mansion close to the palace. Abby's life began to change in ways she could hardly believe. She moved from her small hut to a beautiful new home in the heart of the kingdom. She became an influential figure in the court, working closely with the king and the nobles. She was no longer just a maid. She became a woman of power, a woman who had once wished for the life of wealth and royalty, and had now been gifted it in the most unexpected way ever. As the years went by, Abby lived happily as a noble woman, a life she was given through grace, hard work, and a little bit of magic. The life she had was more than she could have ever dreamt of. This is the end